Welcome back. Time to bring in our panel right now to talk about this week's top stories. Joining us this week, former state party chair for the Indiana Democrats, Robin Winston, Republican former state representative Mike Murphy, former Democratic state representative Terry Austin, and Purdue political science professor Dr. Martin Sweet, who's also a veteran of the Rubio campaign. Martin, yet another week with a significant mass shooting, this time in Louisville, just ahead of the NRA here in Indiana, a convention that certainly still has a lot of pull for Republican candidates, though as some have suggested, it's an organization that may not be quite as influential as it used to be.
Yeah, I think the NRA itself as an organization has probably been on the decline for a while. Their membership is down, the amount of money they spend on lobbying is down. But what's really important about the NRA is not so much their direct membership, but their advocacy for an idea, and that people sort of buy into that idea around the country. And so there are voters who have never received an NRA card in the mail, but sort of consider themselves pro-gun rights. And that's what politicians are really paying attention to, is that idea, rather than actual membership in the organization.
But on the other side of the political spectrum, a lot of people who dislike that idea in the face of these continued mass shootings that we've seen. Terry, what are your thoughts on the convention coming back here, and also on the state Senate's resolution this week praising the NRA with the NRA's president there at the State House the day after that shooting in Louisville?
Let me start with the resolution. First of all, I thought it was interesting that they did it by a voice vote instead of asking. Nobody asked for a roll call. Would have been an opportunity for people to express their concern or displeasure with it. Secondly, I'm not surprised that the convention is back here. I think Indiana, the NRA has invested a lot in Indiana through campaigns and candidates and policy lobbying. But more importantly, I think that it was interesting that the House didn't follow suit. You know, a lot of times you'll have concurrent resolutions, one in the House, one in the Senate. House had no part of it.
Mike, your view from across the aisle, both on the NRA being back here in Indiana and this resolution that passed through the state Senate this week?
Well, I think it's great they're back, frankly. They're great for the economy. They advocate and defend for a basic, part of the Bill of Rights, the number 2 amendment, not the number 3, number 4, number 5 amendment, but the number 2 amendment that the founding fathers thought was that important. So I don't have any problem being here at all. As far as the resolution goes, yeah, it could have been a little tone deaf. I'm not up on Speaker Houston's policies on resolutions anymore, but I do know that his policy lately in the last year or two, maybe because of COVID, is they don't bring in outside speakers generally. And so maybe that was less about the NRA and more about ongoing policy as far as outside speakers go.
Robin, your view on all this in the wake of this latest tragedy involving, as we pointed out earlier, a shooter with ties to Indiana.
And ties to us. I know Tommy Elliott. He's a banker in Louisville and very close to Governor Beshear. In fact, he was the governor's finance chair. So his funeral was on Friday. As far as the NRA, I'm always puzzled why a group that advocates for gun rights makes you go through a magnetometer and not bring your guns in whenever they're having their meeting. I mean, they can parade into the general.
In the room where the former president and former
and in the
VP
room,
speaking.
you're right. But they can bring guns in right outside the governor's residence here about masks and other things. So I think we need to tamp all this down. We're getting a little bit way overstated on this.
Let's talk about some of the politics at play here with 2024 right around the corner. This is an event for many of, if not all of, the presidential hopefuls in the Republican primary. Here in Indy on Friday, you had Donald Trump and Mike Pence speaking to the same crowd in the same room at different times, though. What do you make of that and their approach here toward one another ahead of this potential face-off in the Republican primary?
Yeah, it's interesting. This is sort of one of the first effective cattle calls we've seen,
right.
Although, again, we have some of these folks not appearing here in person. They're appearing via video. So it's not quite the kickoff we're looking for
Including
just yet.
DeSantis, Tim Scott, who just announced this week.
Right,
Yeah.
Nikki Haley, I think's daughter is
Right.
being married, so she is not here. I have to think, though, that for Trump, right, it's interesting that he's not been going after anybody but DeSantis, right? And so I think his calculation is probably, if I leave these other people alone, they'll stay in the race longer, I'll divide my opposition more, and be able to sort of solidify and to get through with sort of a lower threshold. All the polling showing if there's a one-on-one race with DeSantis, That's probably his toughest competition. But as long as everyone else
But
is
if
in the
there's
race,
all these other candidates,
right,
right.
it's 2016 all over again.
Right. Terry, what's your view from across the aisle of this Republican field, still led, it appears, by former President Donald Trump?
Well, there's still, a ways for people to announce their candidacy. I personally long for the days of Richard Lugar and Bill Bradley. I wish we would have some statesmen run, people with some real intellect and who could sort of carve out a moderate path. I think that would be the wish of many, many Americans. But that's not what we've got. We're going to see this group, I think, play to every special interest that's out there. And I'm looking for some of the younger Republicans to step up and say, maybe it's time we took our place in the party.
Mike, at the NRA, Pence talked about some potential solutions on things like mental health and school safety. He's changed his view somewhat on red flag laws, something that he supported in the past. Not as much anymore, trying to maybe create some space between he and the former president on that issue of guns. But he also faced what sounded like a couple of boos when he came out on stage at the NRA from some Republicans he may never win over.
Oh, yeah. And it's always been the case. No politician is universally loved. I remember when both when Mitch Daniels and when Bart Peterson walked into Lucas Oil Stadium, which is always a mistake to take politics to a sports venue, they both got booed heavily, and they're both pretty popular guys at that time.
The NFL commissioner always gets booed at the NFL draft, too, for that matter.
Back to the NRA, I think, people evolve. I think any politician who never changes his or her mind is kind of strange, frankly. The NRA in the 90s testified in Congress in favor of universal background checks. Now they're ahead of it. Or now they're against it, I should say. And so why is that? I would love to see universal background checks. If I'm going to buy a gun, I'm a law-abiding person, I don't mind waiting a week to get my gun. It just doesn't bother me at all. But the shooter in Kentucky, significant mental health problems, don't know the complete nature of them, but we need to get much better at stopping people who shouldn't have guns from having guns.
Robin, I'll give you the final word here as we talk about the NRA, Mike Pence, the Republican primary, everything that we're about to see here in the coming months.
I still think Donald Trump is going to be their nominee. I think that you better get ready for it. I think he's going to emerge out of Milwaukee as their nominee. Whether he is indicted or whatever the charges are, he's going to be their nominee. I think they came to Indiana because the NRA is a powerful constituency. I see people driving down the street with an NRA sticker on the back of their car. I'm not sure they're a card-carrying member anymore, but that's their way of showing people that's where they stand on gun rights.
The NRA here this weekend. As you mentioned, the RNC in Milwaukee, the DNC in Chicago next year, certainly the Midwest, a hotbed of political activity once again. All right, coming up next, the latest on the massive fire in Indiana that had President Biden on the phone with Indiana's governor and what the EPA is saying now about the aftermath.